Today I'm going to talk about lighting on your model railway. Now this is a subject that can be a little bit divisive, almost as much as the DC versus DCC control debate, which is still ongoing and the jury is still out for some people. But lighting your model railway does have its uses, and I'll explain. For those of you who are into photography, the amateur photographers among you, or perhaps model video, and you want to have a completely different outlook on your layout, adding lighting to it can create a different atmosphere. Now, many people will argue that the average model railway is only viewed under natural daylight, and therefore all of the lighting accessories that would appear on the station or the platforms or the interiors of the buildings or even the cars that are positioned on the layout aren't really required because they wouldn't be lit during the daylight hours. And that is correct. However, if you want to start looking into video or photography and capturing a different aspect of your layout, then adding lights and creating a lot of atmosphere can be a great way to achieve that. So I'm going to take a look today at a new range of products from DMG Electech, which has introduced these street lamps suitable for its entire range is going to be suitable for the 1880s to present day. However, the ranges that we're going to look at today are suitable for the 1940s to the present day. So let's take a look at them. They're all DC powered. They are supplied with resistors. We're going to light them up and just take a look at the options that are available, and perhaps you'll be interested in adding some of these to your model railway. Let's check them out. We start off with the STL1940 sold in a 5-pack, the STL/1950 sold in a 10-pack, and the STL/MI1 sold as a 5-pack. Effectively what you've got here is a street lamp representative of those in the post-war era of the 1940s. We have the 1950s, and then MI obviously being modern image for, well, the website describes these as post-1970s. However, I do believe that these are slightly more recent, and I'll come on to the reasoning why in a bit. So the STL940 is supplied with a warm white LED fitted, as used in the 1940s and 50s, and also as installed today. Many of these can still be purchased, obviously not from the original suppliers. However, they are often installed as an ornate alternative to modern lighting, particularly in pedestrian areas or areas of gardens, parks and the like, just to add a bit of character. They are supplied with a metal tube, which forms the base of the lamp, which makes them very sturdy. This means that you've got to simply drill a 2mm diameter hole into your layout, your baseboard or your diorama. You just push them through. A little dab of adhesive at the bottom there secures them into position, and they won't go anywhere because of that extra bit protruding through the bottom there. Now these aren't adjustable in height. However, the STL1950s are adjustable in height, and that is purely achieved by moving this little collar up and down on the base there. So you can see it's sprayed to about a height of 97mm from there to there. That gives you a rough idea as to the height of these. You can of course reduce that by moving this further up and hiding the rest in your baseboard. At 97mm in height from the top to the bottom, you've got a 10mm or thereabouts protrusion through the bottom, which is ample for securing this into the standard thickness of ply used on a layout, which is 9mm. And also helps protect those wires through your baseboard. The top of the little ornate lamp here is 9.7mm in width, and you've got this little ornate sort of spigot that goes through there. The 1940s earlier period one having a slightly shorter version and more ornate and more detailed little lantern at the top there with the finial, you can see. A little bit more decorative. Not sure how easy that is to pick up on camera. There we go, a comparison of the two there. Now these are sold in packs of 5. All are supplied with a 3-year warranty, Remember that these are LEDs, they last a long time, particularly if you respect the voltages which are indicated on the product. Now these are suitable for 12 volt to 16 volt operation, which is all of the common voltages that you're likely to encounter with the outputs of your transformer on your model railway if you're using DC. I would recommend using a smooth waveform transformer for the output of these, i.e. a more modern transformer, not a low budget transformer, something that you're going to avoid getting those voltage spikes when you turn the dial on. All of these products are supplied with the necessary resistors. These must be used, and you should respect the correct polarity when you install them. Always install the resistor on the positive terminal of your LED. Now these all form, as discussed and mentioned earlier, part of a new range from the manufacturer, suitable from the 1800s to the present day. And if you don't use the resistors supplied, then you must respect the voltage input of 3 volts or lower. Obviously, the lower the voltage input, the less your LED will shine, and therefore the dimmer the light obviously coming out of it. Now the modern street lights STL/MI1, these are sold as a 5-pack, and they are described on the website as being suitable for the 1970s to 1980s period. However, these are fitted with a cool white LED. Now for the streetlight aficionados among you, the 1970s and 1980s era of streetlights were often using the sort of high pressure sodium light, which was a very yellow light, and would often give a monochromatic view of anything that was around it. With modern LED lights, obviously your perception of colour underneath them is far superior. So I'd perhaps push the boat out and say that these are more suitable for sort of the latest generation of street lamps from the sort of mid-2000s, perhaps even 2010s onwards to the present day. The sort of lower wattage street lamps that you tend to find around residential areas and along the sides of the street, but also on platforms as well. These measure 140 millimeters in height, and I think they are fantastic. All 3 of them. Beautifully detailed. There's little work, if any at all, for the modeler to do. There's a tiny bit of flash, and this is only being a fair criticism of the models. Tiny bit of flash which can be removed using a scalpel there on the injection molded components. That's it. There's nothing else to do. Of course, if you want to, you could consider painting these in the colours of your railway. If these were placed outside a station, for example, and you wanted to add a little bit of character. But for modern street lamps, they all pretty much look the same. They're this sort of galvanized steel colour with you can see they're adjustable in height to some extent with the tube going in and out there. But yeah, they all pretty much look very similar in appearance. So very little to do there at all on these. Excellent additions. Now let's take a look at how these look with a little bit of light running through them. So here I have a piece of card into which I've poked 5 of the street lamps. These are the 1950s era ones, sold in a pack of 10, so I'm only using 5 here. But as you can see underneath, I've daisy chained them together, the wires, and I've just taken from the end 2 LEDs, 1 positive and 1 negative terminal. As you can see here, very thin wires these, single core. However, they are pre-stripped, which makes soldering them or daisy chaining them into chock blocks, these sort of screw down terminals, very easy. Let's take a look at our transformer for a second. This is a Gagemaster Combi DC controller with DC and 16 volt AC accessory output. Do not use the AC accessory output when you're using LEDs. Big no-no. stick to the DC output. This is what we want. LEDs only like a DC output, so stick with that. Anything under, it says 12 to 16 volts from the manufacturer, but I'd recommend staying underneath 12 volts just in case you have a voltage spike or something like that when you're turning the dial. Better still, if you want to use a dedicated transformer, then go for it. Otherwise, you could use one of these little controllers underneath your layout and just power the lighting directly from this. The advantage being you can regulate how bright it is just by turning the dial there. Or alternatively, if you want another solution, you could consider a simple 9-volt battery. There you go. So we've got a resistor, which is very important. This limits the current going to your LEDs. The current, you can imagine the current as a pipe. So imagine electricity is water flowing through a pipe. A big pipe has a larger amount of current that can flow through it. A thin pipe only has a small amount of current that can flow through it. So an LED can only accept a small amount of current. These are not components that are designed to have a large amount of current or water flowing through them. Too much water or current and you end up with a burst pipe or a broken LED. So fitting one of these supplied as required is recommended. I'm going to fit the other wire to this terminal here, just screw that into place. So just using a miniature jeweler's screwdriver there. And then the other one we can just wrap around this end of the resistor. As long as it's protected by that resistor, will be fine. And if you're not sure of the correct orientation of the output, which is positive and which is negative of your transformer or your controller, whatever it is you're using to power these, I'd recommend using a voltmeter beforehand and just checking that you've got the terminals the right way round. I happen to know that this is the right way round, so the Gauge Master Combi, if it's in reverse and you've got the resistor fitted to the innermost of the two DC outputs there and you turn the dial, that is the correct output. So we'll just rotate the dial and dim the lights in the studio and show how these look. There we go. You can see the 5 of them start to appear. So there is a minimum start voltage, which is just around about there. And as I crank this up, obviously you'll see more of what's beneath them. There we go. That's probably about as bright as I'd want them, really. I mean, bearing in mind these are older style street lamps, which wouldn't have given out a great deal of light in the first place. These would be positioned, I don't know, every 1.5 foot or so on your layout, opposite sides of the road. So you can get a bit of an atmosphere just by dotting them around your layout. And there's plenty of opportunities in positioning these on your layout to have a cameo beneath them. So it could be somebody walking their dog late at night, or somebody sat on a park bench, for instance. Anyway, let's turn these down, switch them off, and see how the modern street lamp differs. Okay, so modern street lamp connected up, and we're just going to turn the dial here on the controller. There we are, and you can start to see there's a bit of a halo up here, and obviously this lamp casts a lot more light and also slightly wider spread of light because it's higher up. You don't actually notice the LED itself from here, so you can only see effectively the light that it casts underneath it because of where it's positioned, just like you would do in reality. But that casts a fantastic spread of light, so the LED is correctly positioned inside the unit. And also, good to see, is there's very little to none at all in terms of light bleed from the lamp here. This is often a problem with modern street lamps, particularly bright white LEDs like this, is that they will shine through the plastic of the street lamp there at the top. But there's no light bleed there at all, which is great to see. And a credit to the manufacturer. Great spread of light, and you can imagine having a road with these positioned around, or even a roundabout on a model railway. How good would that look? These would be fantastic. So there you have it, the new range of lights suitable for layouts from the 1880s right the way through to the present day from DMG Electech. Don't forget the range is growing all the time, and also those all important resistors must be added, so don't forget to add those and you won't go far wrong. If you'd like to find out more details including current pricing and availability, visit the DMG Electech website. The address is on screen below.